I first came to the Henley Regatta as a boy in 1950. In 52, I entered for the Diamond Sculls and got to the semi-final. The next year, 53, I was conscripted for national service and was then rowing for the RAF here at Henley. When I had finished with the RAF, I came to Henley to live, and at one time was rowing from the Henley Rowing Club. Now, the Henley Rowing Club then was housed in part of what was the Henley Brewery property, and that fronted the embankment at the bottom of Hart Street. Quite interestingly, the traffic was terrific, and we had to hold the traffic up to get the boats across the road and into the water. When I first rowed here, there were booms right down to the start, and many of the crews coming up the island would clash into the booms. Disaster, that is, because it just stops you dead, and they're so unforgiving. Now we have buoys that mark the first 200 metres or so of the course. That's much more friendly towards the oarsmen. I have an Australian friend whom I've known for very many years. He has always been a bad boy and made life amusing for the crowd. But, of course, he was a very successful sculler. On one occasion, he sculled and won his race by so much, he was able to get into the boathouse, change, and come out and greet the opponent that he'd just raced.
The South African crew came to Henley many, many years ago, and Henley Royal Regatta, every race starts on time. Everything has to be perfect. And this South African crew went all the way down to Hambledon Lock. And when the umpire launch got in position at the start, there was only one crew in position. And if we say, for example, the race was due to start at 10 o'clock, the umpire looked around, there was no sign of the South African crew. So he started the race with one crew. And the South Africans then turned up and they were too late. And they'd come all the way from South Africa and they didn't even race because they didn't get to the stake boat on time.
You just get one bite of the cherry and that's it. So you could come from out of Mongolia, and if you lose on the Wednesday, that's it, you go home. Finished. And it's surprising really that the foreign crew still come because of that. But it's because if you're an American, to row at Henley, you apply for a job in the States, and oh yeah, I rowed for Henley, for Harvard, Yale, Princeton. That's like brownie points.
You have to know the course very well, because it's not so easy to know exactly where you are. So the more you can rehearse in practice, we have things, the start of the steward's enclosure. There always used to be a tall poplar tree, and that is 500 metres from the end, and it is 55 strokes. Now, little gimmicks like that, get there, you know where you are. The hole in the wall is a sort of slipway on the other side of Phyllis Court, 30 strokes. The scoreboard, 20 strokes. And it's things like this that, you know, you build up with the crew, and you just remind them before the race, you know, don't try and race right to the end, try and just race to our marks. You know when you get to the mark you're doing well, and so you move up the course. When you do the push at Henley, it's got to be absolutely effective, whereas in a multi-lane cruise, if the push isn't quite right, only perhaps one crew will notice. The other crews are further away won't notice, but Henley, you've got to get it right, because if you pick up boat speed and you don't then capitalise on it, you let it off too soon or it's not effective, the other crew can tell, oh, you're fading off, they then do their push, and just as you're collapsing, they can move on you. So Henley is quite different. There have been some absolutely classic racing events. Nottingham against Harvard, not international cruise. Harvard was deemed to be the best 8 they'd had for many years. Nottingham was the Nottingham lightweights. Nottingham beat Harvard by about half a length, paddled into the boat tent, and Harvard protested that shortly off the start a twig had got stuck on their rudder and they couldn't go at the speed which was they felt they should have done. There was a lot of umming and ahhing, and the stewards agreed a re-row. By that time, Nottingham were well into the beers. Anyway, after the main regatta finished, people had left or come up, say, to Leander to have tea or a drink. And for this race, at the end of the day, everybody was moving back down to the stewards' enclosure. And these Nottingham guys, who probably shouldn't have won, Harvard probably were better than them, set off again, and they were so steamed up, full of beer, that they repeated the performance and beat Harvard again by half a length. You know, and it was one of those fantastic sort of things. How did they do it? Lightweight men, you know, against this huge, great Harvard crew. It was a real classic of racing and courage and all the good things about racing.